All right, we got our next guest here.
Here we go.
Ready to join HURRICADE 2025. The great Bruce Feldman. Here he is, Bruce from The Athletic and Fox. Bruce, long time no talk, man. Peter Rees here. Great to have you on the show today. Very gracious with your time. Wanted to ask you, man. I mean, Dan Radakovich, Miami AD, the other day said in his opening season press conference, look, top 10 this year. He kind of looked around to the media, said preseason top 10. That wasn't happening 4 years ago. Is this about where you'd expect Mario to have been at this point in this rebuild?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, Peter, I would have expected last year a playoff to be as good as they were on offense, but obviously the defense didn't hold up its end. But you talk about like roster construction, like Mario lives and breathes recruiting, and obviously O-line development and stuff like that too. But I think at the top line stuff is he was going to upgrade the roster. I mean, we go back, it's obviously Notre Dame, USC out of the gate. Notre Dame, Miami out of the gate. And you think back to like, I don't know, it's probably 7 years ago or whatever. And Manny had a good team, a really good defense. They were opportunistic, not very good on offense. And they crushed that Irish team. It was like 48-7 or whatever it was. And I don't want to say it felt fluky, but it didn't feel like they have the talent this team does, right? And I just think that's a testament to the commitment, not just Mario, but that whole athletic department has made towards getting it back and fixing it, because let's be honest, Miami's been broken for a long time.
Bruce, you've written some incredible books, as you can tell by that beautiful backdrop behind you right there. You've done well with some great books.
Beautiful natural lighting, Bruce.
Oh, it looks incredible. The QB, right? So this is a position that you've dove in on. You've talked to a ton of people that know a ton about the position, have different perspectives on it. I have to ask you about Miami's quarterback, Carson Beck, because it is one of the most unusual, at least from the outside, kind of approaches to quarterback where you have he's number one projected overall pick. Now this year, we know he's healthy, or at least he's throwing it like he's healthy. And yet the buzz is almost all gone, despite having basically the same stats as a Garrett Nussmeier. So from your perspective as a national guy who talks to a ton of QB people and really understands his position better than the average Joe, what's your take on Carson Beck?
I'm excited to see what he does this year in this offense, right? And going back about a year ago, almost exactly this time, he was the guy that most NFL personnel people were intrigued by. Quick release, super smart, got pretty good size. He had played in a bunch of big games. And then last year at Georgia, Brock Bowers goes to the NFL. We know how that went for him. Ladd McConkey goes to the NFL. He was even better, there than he was at Georgia. And it really looked like Carson was pressing. There was a lot of up and down. It was just different. So now he has a year to kind of soak in it. And now people are, I would say, underestimating him. Like people who are in this business, I feel like don't have long memories. They forgot about, maybe a year and a half ago, and they just remember, what happened last year and the expectations and it not going great. But I'm most interested to see, like, you had a quarterback in Cam Ward who going into last year, most people were looking at as a 5th round pick. Well, he went to be the first pick in the draft. And a big part of that was what he blossomed into at Miami in that system. I thought it was like Shannon Dawson, the offense coordinator, deserves a ton of credit for helping him really elevate. And I think, knowing a little bit about Shannon Dawson, also knowing, like he knows Todd Monken really well. Todd Monken knows Carson Beck really well, probably has as good a viewpoint on him as anybody. So I think Miami kind of knew the potential of what they were getting, right? He's going to be behind a very good offensive line, because that's what Mario and Alex Mirabal are really all about. Heard really good things about all 3 running backs. Excited to see Jordan Lyle, see what he can do. And, it's just the receiving core. You have young guys around him, but young guys that everybody's really excited about, and they like their makeup and their approach to things. I think this is a ripe situation for Carson Beck to have a big year.
Bruce is the best information guy in the business, and he's right on the money when he says Todd Monken had a lot of influence here. Miami, there was a certain narrative that we've outlined with Carson Beck surrounding his time at Georgia, and Miami had its questions. Todd Monken did a lot to put their mind at ease, and after that conversation, Miami was all in on bringing Carson Beck to the U. Mario Cristobal, a huge part of that too. You've written incredible pieces on Mario Cristobal. You have great insight. You know him pretty well. How built for this kind of, it's been dubbed a Wild West era of college football. It is a tough game. We've seen a lot of titans of this game, Nick Saban, leave the game because of, and true to all sorts of sports, in college basketball as well, the grind. Katie Meyer, got to her. How built for this is Mario Cristobal, and how lucky is Miami to have somebody with that mentality given the current state of college football?
Yeah, he's like a football maniac. Like, he is obsessed with it. Two people of all the coaches I've ever been around who were the most obsessed with recruiting and physical football are Mario Cristobal and Ed Ogeron. They're really different. It's almost like they are the far left side of the football coach evolution chart. And a lot of those other guys have fallen by the wayside because I don't think they can sustain it, or they burn out, or, they just get too far away from it. He's really, that cliche, he's built for this. And that part, I think what also helps him now is that the staffs have been able to gotten a lot larger, so you can have more people in more roles. So you're not putting so much on the individual position coaches now, because now there's personnel departments and all the things around it. So you know what, maybe they can't keep up with his pace, but now all of a sudden you're splitting it into a bunch of other guys who are now involved in that process. So I think that really flows better for him. And it just seems like he has deputized certain people in certain roles, which I think work well. The last time I was down at UM, I couldn't believe, because I went to school there. Mario and I, at the same time at UM, by the way. So that's where, kind of we go back to. But I couldn't get over how much different the facilities are, and then the plans of everything that's going on there. I think that kind of goes hand in hand. Back when Mario was a GA, whatever we're talking about, 25 plus years ago, Miami football was rolling. It was the gold standard. And I felt like they would look at it as, all right, our facilities are not what a lot of other people have. But if we want a kid who is so enamored by fancy facilities, that's the wrong kind of kid for us. Well, what we saw over a generation was a lot of really good football players are that kind of kid. And I feel like, what had to happen was they had to more than meet that in the middle ground. I think they had to go lean that way. And I think Mario learned from his time, not just under Nick Saban, because he did a really good job in a terrible situation at FIU. But then he goes spends time learning around Nick Saban, then goes up to Oregon. I think that was eye-opening for him. And then when he came back, I think he's had a better perspective on a lot of things.
There's been so much change in college football. It's very hard to keep up because one thing happens and another thing happens, and it's happening so fast. You, as someone who really, in my opinion, is very good at spotting trends, you talk to so many coaches. What do you think the next big trend or shift is in college football?
It's a good question. I don't have a great sense of how long does rev share in this model that basically just came in this summer. How sustainable is it? My guess, and it's calling it my guess is probably cheating, but like from talking to people who are the most connected when it comes to this, they're usually the personnel people who are like the right-hand man of the head coach, is that at some point we're going to get to collective bargaining. And because I think they're just so worried about the flood of lawsuits that are coming. And you guys, I know that you're pretty connected inside the inner workings of the sport. So you kind of know where some of this is probably going to. I think because there's such fear about the lawsuits and all of this and just getting overwhelmed by it, that's what I've always heard in the last year or so, is that the only sustainable way they get through this eventually is to get it to collective bargaining. Now that's going to have a lot of unique challenges to it too, but we seem to be going towards an NFL model, and that's obviously where they are already.
Bruce, it seems like it's going to be hard to agree to a collective bargaining agreement without some sort of pause. The money machine needs to keep rolling. You're talking about players, student athletes that haven't necessarily established generational wealth. And presently, the revenue sport is paying for a lot of non-revenue sports. is there any way that college athletics can continue business as usual with a grand reshaping like you're talking about?
I don't know. Because I feel like the NCAA, whether it's the old version or now with Charlie Baker, I feel like it's very antiquated and they're kind of can't get out of their own way. So does the model eventually get entirely blown up? It might, because right now, the TV networks, and full disclosure, I work at one of them, Fox, they have a lot more influence than they did 20 years ago, right? Whether it's Fox in the Big Ten or certainly ESPN in the SEC. This is just a whole different dynamic of where it's going, and there's a lot of stuff converging at once. I don't have a great feel for where that goes and how it plays out. I just would say this: we've had more change in college athletics in like the last 5 years than we probably did in the previous 50. So that tells me that whether you want to say we're going down the slope fast, or we're on a rocket ship. I don't know which analogy works, but it's dramatically changing, and nothing would surprise me after the last few years of how things have gone.
Bruce, really appreciate your time today. Thanks for hopping in with us this afternoon. Have a great time this season. I know you're on the move constantly, so excited to take a look at your work this year, man.
My pleasure. Thanks. By the way, Peter, I remember meeting you for lunch back when you're you were breaking news. I was like, who's this 22-year-old guy who's just like doing all this? So it's really cool to see.
Now we're streaming. We're moving on to this medium now. So appreciate your support as always, Bruce. We'll be in touch, man.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me, guys.
Great. Beautiful interior design.
Unbelievable.
All right, guys, we're going to go from one great guest to this is a big one right